Welcome to Voices of Tech and Litigation with your host, Ray Beken. This podcast will broaden your knowledge in the use of technology in business and our everyday world. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, chorusconsulting.net. Now here's the host of Voices of Tech and Litigation, Ray Beken.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining our first podcast. I have a special guest today, our founding member, managing director of Chorus Consulting, John Myers. There's a cool history of how John and I met. John was my forensics expert in some past business relationships. And when I wanted to get into more of the service side of things and not necessarily just the software side and wanted to get more hands-on and deal with clients every day, I went to John and said, hey, man, I want to see about coming to work from you. And our relationship started about 15 years ago. And John and I met then. So welcome, John. I appreciate you taking the time to join me.
Afternoon, Ray.
Cool. One of the questions I get quite often when people are first meeting me and are first introduced to Chorus Consulting is, how did the name Chorus Consulting come about? And you've told me before, I've said it to a number of customers before, and you're chuckling. But it's a cool story. It's an interesting story. There's some personal tidbits to it. So share with us where Chorus came about, how the name came to be.
Sure, Ray. You know, the funny thing that we get asked is, hey, are you a rock group or some sort of musician or anything? And the answer is no, we're not. When I started Chorus nearly 20 years ago, I'd come out of some of the big consulting firms, and I sat down with some other team members and was like, okay, we've got to come up with a company name. And we kind of reflected upon our history at some of the big companies and realized that, you know, our team was really kind of instrumental in going in and kind of cleaning up projects that other people hadn't done so successfully. So we became kind of, you know, good at doing that work. So we're, you know, sitting around a couple of drinks and kind of laughing, and we're like, well, you know, that kind of means that we kind of bring harmony or a little bit of you know, ease to projects after cleaning up. So someone said, well, what about something like Chorus? You know, Chorus kind of brings harmony. They sing in harmony. So we sat there and said, okay, let's do that. It didn't strap us to one particular technology, even though our history in the big consulting firms and even here now today, we specialize in the legal market. We just thought it was kind of a neat name. You kind of go a couple of years, and my oldest daughter actually is a singer. And actually, she's actually a trained opera singer. So when people found out that about me, they're like, are you sure you're not, you know, some sort of music management or you know, legal or something like that? It's like, no, we're not. But you know, kind of our tagline, you know, something that we've kind of put around this is that we bring harmony to projects. You know, and if you think of it from the standpoint of a choir, you know, they have harmony.
Yeah. I've kind of added to that a little bit in just some discussions. It's not an official tagline or anything, but I've kind of said, we make your data sing. And we make your data tell the story, you know, we make it sing. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. All right. So 2003, 20 years in business. Previous to that, in the business since, I guess, around the mid 80s, things have changed. A lot's going on, you know, in the tech world. What are you seeing that's changed and is becoming more prevalent today? What are you seeing today that people are needing help with? Even sometimes they don't even realize they need help necessarily.
Well, Ray, you're right. I mean, you know, when I started in this business, it was all about paper, you know, lots and lots of paper in boxes and converting that into a digital format. And, you know, that carried on for years. I think even the year that the government decided to pass the Paperwork Reduction Act, I think the following year we scanned more paper the following year than the previous years. But, you know, the industry's evolved. You know, what used to be, I'll call an analog medium in paper or something like that, has really transformed into more digital. You know, people are now using word processors, they're using Excel spreadsheets, They're using all the business operation or operational applications. In addition to that, you've got, the introduction of email that happened decades ago, and just the huge volume of data that goes through email. And then, you roll into today's day and age, it's all those. And now you've got to start combining in, cell phones, mobile devices, these smartwatches, everything that, any user you may use personally or even in your business world. It just, the amount of data that is now generated far exceeds anything we've ever seen in the past. And now it's all coming to us digitally. And so the challenges we really have is kind of getting our arms around all that data and putting it into a manageable form for really our clients, which are, attorney review teams and even our clients when it comes to some of the cyber review work that we have to do. So it's gotten to be challenging, where we used to think that, wow, here I've got this cell phone with, 64K of memory in it, and I can take a bunch of pictures. Now we're talking about devices that, carry in excess of a terabyte of storage. So you can take pictures of your meals and your kids and your vacation, and everything else. And in some cases, even, you can use your phone to scan documents, which, whether that be for personal or for business. So, in today's day and age, it's, that's really the challenge, is just the massive amount of data that we're having to get our hands around and helping clients with.
Yeah. Yeah. It changes every day. So, man, you have to stay on your toes and make the best of every situation when changes are happening, right?
Well, yeah. And to that point, Ray, I mean, it's kind of interesting because some of the changes don't come from the users or even from, the devices themselves. I mean, they do come from the devices is what it is. We have to stay on top of this technology, especially when it comes to the mobile devices, because it's one of those things where the people are still using them in their everyday life. However, the way we have to capture the data from those devices, we have to be on our toes. Sometimes there are changes that happen and we're not even made aware of it. The manufacturers of these devices continue to do things to basically ensure users' security and safety and their personal information. And along with that, though, it makes our job a little bit more interesting and a little bit more challenging, because if there's a change that's made for the benefit of the overall community and the overall industry, we've got the challenge to making sure how can we get that data out there for clients.
Yeah. Well, speaking of data and speaking of clients, you've done this for a long time. Talk a little bit about some of the fun stuff you've worked on, past, present, fun cases, good memories, things that you go, wow, that was really cool. Something like that.
Well, if we go back to the early days, paper, I worked for a firm that we actually did a lot of the paper scanning for the tobacco companies, for the tobacco litigation years ago. Our scanning effort in that alone was 143 million pieces of paper, which probably by today's standard isn't a lot, but when you were talking the late 80s, early 90s, that was huge and instrumental. You kind of roll forward, through the career, the transition from the analog to the digital. We were involved very early on with the Enron situation and actually did some data collection for that. That data collection, I think everybody has actually touched it at some point in time in their life. We were still with a big consulting firm and actually were one of the groups that originally actually captured the hard drives from some of the senior people in that litigation. And if I came to actually even more recently, probably one of the fun ones was we helped what is now called the Hendricks experience in a suit where they were actually defending their intellectual property. And there's been a couple articles written about it, but the short version is that the intellectual property from the Hendricks experience, which by the way is Jimi Hendrix, it likes to get borrowed, in terms of his likeness, in terms of his music. There are organizations that try to use that. However, it is actually governed by the family with regards to how you can use that material. And there was one particular case where an individual was trying to use the likeness of the artist, and it was not licensed properly. And the case actually ended up being a federal case in New York. And the short version is originally went in for a intellectual property kind of theft of or use, violation of use, and it ultimately turned into, through some twists and turns, more into a spoliation issue, where it was proven that the defendants in this case were actually trying to hide data and actually deleted data. And the reason I say it's kind of fun is that it was probably one of the most interesting clients I had, because I had an opportunity to meet and to interact with Janie Hendricks, which is Jimmy's half sister, which wonderful lady. And we kind of giggled and laughed, and as even though it was a serious situation, kind of made light of it, but we really helped them out.
Yeah, cool. And if I remember correctly, we ended up uncovering some deleted text that we were able to revive or something like that. I mean, if I'm remembering that case correctly, I didn't work on it, so I'm remembering from you.
Well, in our discussions, yeah, I mean, that is accurate. We were able, the case was early on, and even some of the tools that we utilized were not as mature as they are today, but the data that we actually were able to uncover was really instrumental in having the judge kind of change the direction, and even the attorneys change the direction of this. It wasn't just kind of recovering deleted data. We actually kind of pulled the entire structure of the phone apart, and actually found snippets of the data that we were then able to further work with, that kind of pointed us in that direction, and aided in the attorneys hitting basically with a bigger claim. I think at the end of the day, what ultimately ended up happening with the defense in that case is that the penalties that the judge and kind of put upon the defendants were so large. I think it actually ended up, unfortunately, bankrupting them, but it actually worked out for our client from the standpoint of making sure that the intellectual property was not inappropriately used.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Well, so things are changing. That was a little bit while back. Man, there's AI. Data is increasing, it's not decreasing. New apps are coming out. Legal challenges. There's just all kinds of things that we have to keep on top of. Where do you think we're headed? If you had a crystal ball, where are we headed?
I don't know about having a crystal ball, but I mean, what we're seeing these days is, you're right. With the introduction of artificial intelligence, AI, Chat GPT, deep fakes, the criminals are getting smarter and smarter out there. People hear about and talk about, business email compromise, even, which is not necessarily new tech, but the bad doers or the wrongdoers are getting smarter in terms of being able to kind of expose or exploit users of their systems to get to monies and to data, and it's gotten to the point where it's accelerating. Just this morning we found out that a client that we've recently helped in the past once again has been attacked from an email standpoint, where it looked like the CFO of the company actually wrote an email requesting that another account be established and monies be transferred to the account. And it was sophisticated enough. The email was sophisticated enough and actually read just like the CFO would script something, that they went through with it. And unfortunately, they're having to unwind that. What we're finding is that when you talk about that specific kind of an attack, is that it used to be one of those things where you could read an email, you could see misspellings, you could see that the grammar wasn't proper. And unfortunately, there's two things. One, with the introduction of AI and Chat GPT, that's getting a little bit better. But at the same time, the criminals are actually starting to employ linguists and and people that know how to proofread and structure these emails in such a way that you definitely think that you're talking to or communicating with the actual original source of that data. I mean, I've heard even recently where with some of this technology that they're able to take just snippets of interviews and snippets of words and string them together so that you actually have an audio file that actually sounds like the individual. How does that impact us? It impacts us and our clients from the standpoint of they get compromised, but at the same time where you're having to transcript some of this data so that someone can review it and say this transcript's correct, this transcript's incorrect, but it's a big challenge. And some of my colleagues in the industry have actually done a couple of these things where they've actually sampled out their voices and everything using some of this technology to show just how easy that is.
Yeah. Man, you hear about new things every day. Man, I appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today, talk about Chorus Consulting, where it came from. The name's always interesting to me. I get that question a lot. I'm the one out and about all the time, so I get that question quite a bit. Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to touch base on before we sound off?
I mean, really the biggest thing I can say is that one of the things that we've prided ourselves on, and one of the things that we like to do is, we're here to help the client. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the projects that we work on and the clients that we assist, that they're happy with what's going on and they have a good understanding of how to move forward. What we find is that some of our other colleagues in the industry that assist clients sometimes don't explain stuff. We try to explain stuff in terms of the course of our project the best we can. I don't think anybody's perfect. I know that we're not, but it really is trying to make sure that our clients are served correctly. And I think that's why we've been successful over the last 2 decades and why we continue to have clients either refer us to others and move forward.
Yep. It's one of the reasons I joined. I'm a former client and now an employee. So I think that says a lot about you. So I appreciate your time, John.
Thanks, Ray.
That said, I'm going to let you guys go. This is the inaugural Voices of Tech and Litigation. I'm Ray Beken with Chorus Consulting. And next month, we'll be talking to more of an IT partner that we work with. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate y'all's time.
You've been tuning into Voices of Tech and Litigation with your host, Ray Beken. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, chorusconsulting.net. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.